The aroma of roasted turkey and lingering judgment filled my parents' dining room. Through the large bay windows, snow was beginning to fall on their perfectly manicured lawn in Greenwich, Connecticut, a stark contrast to my grandfather's worthless land in West Texas that had become the latest source of family tension. I'm Catherine Morgan, though my family insists on calling me Kate, their way of diminishing everything about me, right down to my name. At 31, I'm the youngest of 3 children and the only one who saw value in the 500 acres of seemingly barren desert land my grandfather left me in his will 6 months ago. Kate, my brother Thomas said, cutting into his organic free-range turkey, be reasonable. That land hasn't produced anything but tumbleweeds for 3 generations. His wife Victoria nodded in agreement, her designer bracelet catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. My sister Elizabeth chimed in from across the table. Even Grandpa called it his biggest mistake. You're just being stubborn. I took a small sip of water, letting their words wash over me like they had for the past 6 months. They had no idea about the geological surveys I'd commissioned or the quiet meetings I'd been having with Titan Energy's exploration team. Sometimes the best strategy is simply waiting for the right moment. The property taxes alone are draining your savings, my father, William Morgan, added. He'd been a successful investment banker before retiring and never missed an opportunity to remind us about financial responsibility. A quick sale would at least give you something to invest properly. My mother dabbed her lips with a linen napkin. Darling, we're just worried about you. First you leave your position at Goldman Sachs to find yourself. And now, you're clinging to this worthless piece of desert. I had to bite back a smile. My time finding myself had actually been spent studying geological surveys, oil extraction technologies, and mineral rights law. The small apartment I'd moved into wasn't because I couldn't afford better. It was because every spare dollar went into research and preparation. We have a buyer lined up, Thomas continued, pulling out a folder from his briefcase. One of my real estate investment group clients. They'll take it off your hands for $175,000. That's generous considering the location. Generous. If they only knew about the preliminary soil samples, or the mineral rights analysis, or the fact that I'd already turned down 3 quiet offers from smaller energy companies. But Titan Energy's chief geologist had confirmed what I'd suspected. The land sat on what could be one of the largest untapped oil reserves in West Texas. The papers are ready. Thomas slid the folder across the table. Just sign, and you can put this whole thing behind you. You know, Thomas, I said carefully, it's interesting that you're so concerned about my financial well-being now. Where was this concern when you tried to contest Grandpa's will? The room went silent. My brother's face flushed. 6 months ago, he'd hired a team of lawyers trying to prove Grandpa wasn't of sound mind when he left me the land instead of splitting it between all 3 grandchildren. That's ancient history, Elizabeth cut in quickly. We're talking about your future, Kate. My future. I stood up slowly, straightening my simple black dress. Bought off the rack at a department store, much to my mother's horror. That's exactly what I'm thinking about. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my contact at Titan Energy. Board approved the offer. Paperwork coming tomorrow morning. Congratulations. I smiled, gathering my things. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. Kate, my father's voice carried that familiar note of disapproval. Don't walk away from this opportunity. That land has been nothing but a burden on this family for 3 generations. Actually, I paused at the door. Grandpa told me something interesting before he died. He said sometimes the best investments are the ones nobody else sees value in. Kind of like that little tech startup you advised him not to invest in back in '98. What was it called again? Oh, right, Amazon. I left them sitting there, surrounded by their certainty and judgment. Tomorrow morning, Titan Energy's offer would hit the news, and their world would shift on its axis. Sometimes the sweetest victory is the one you never saw coming. As I drove home through the snowy streets, I thought about my grandfather's last words to me. Catherine, he'd said, his voice weak, but his eyes sharp as ever, that land isn't just dirt and rocks. It's a test. A test to see who in this family has the patience to look deeper, to think longer, to stand firm when everyone else says sell. I pulled into my parking spot at my modest apartment building, the same building my family thought I lived in because I couldn't afford better. They had no idea I owned the entire complex through a holding company, one of several quiet investments I'd made while they thought I was floundering. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. Press release scheduled for 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Board wants to meet you in person next week. I smiled, thinking about tomorrow's family breakfast. Another Morgan family tradition where they try once more to convince me to sign away my inheritance. Little did they know, in less than 24 hours, that worthless desert land would be worth more than everything else the family owned combined. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them discover just how wrong they were all by themselves. The next morning dawned crisp and cold, sunlight glinting off fresh snow as I parked my Civic outside my parents' Tudor-style mansion. Another family breakfast, another chance for them to question my judgment. Only today would be different. 8:47 a.m. 13 minutes until Titan Energy's press release. My mother opened the door before I could knock, perfect as always in her channel suit. Kate, darling, you're late. I checked my watch. Actually 3 minutes early, but being late was their way of maintaining control. The breakfast room smelled of coffee and condescension. Thomas and Victoria were already seated, his laptop open beside his plate. Elizabeth was typing furiously on her phone, probably updating her Instagram about another charity gala. I took the liberty of having the papers drafted properly, Thomas said, sliding a thick folder across the table. All you need to do is sign. I poured myself a coffee, noting the time. 8:52 a.m. Kate, my father began, using his boardroom voice, you need to think about your future. That land has been draining resources from this family since your grandfather bought it in '75. Actually, I said, taking a small sip of coffee, I've been thinking a lot about the future. About legacy, investment, patience. Patience doesn't pay property taxes, Elizabeth snorted. 8:56 a.m. Speaking of payments, Thomas continued, my client is willing to handle all the transfer fees. You'll walk away with a clean $175,000. Victoria chimed in. That's enough for a down payment on a proper apartment, at least. 8:58 a.m. You know what Grandpa told me about that land? I set down my coffee cup carefully. He said sometimes the biggest opportunities come disguised as mistakes. Your grandfather was a dreamer, my father said dismissively. That's why he died with only that worthless plot to his name. 9:00 a.m. Right on cue, Thomas's laptop pinged with a news alert. His face went from smugged to confused to pale in the span of 3 seconds. This must be a mistake, he stammered. What is it? My mother demanded. Thomas turned the laptop around, his hands shaking slightly. The headline blazed across the screen. Titan Energy, ANNOUNCES. $50 million, APUISIT of PURINTEXAS oil field. Largest INTEPEDU RESERV discovered in last decade. Elizabeth's phone clattered to the floor. Victoria's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. The Morgan family plot. Thomas read aloud, his voice cracking, estimated to contain over 300 million barrels of recoverable oil. Preliminary agreements signed with current owner Catherine Morgan. $50 million, my father whispered. Cash offer, I confirmed. Plus 5% of gross production royalties for the next 30 years. Estimated value of the total package. I paused, enjoying the moment. Just over $2 billion. The silence that followed was absolute. But you said you were struggling, my mother finally managed. No, I corrected gently. You said I was struggling. I said I was being patient. My phone buzzed. Marcus again. Board wants to move up the meeting. Private jet standing by at Teterboro. You knew, Thomas accused, his face reddening. You knew all along there was oil. I suspected. Then I researched. Then I confirmed. Then I negotiated. I stood up, smoothing my department store dress. You know, Thomas, it's interesting. If your legal challenge to Grandpa's will had succeeded, you'd be worth about $700 million right now. Elizabeth made a choking sound. The meeting, my father started, shifting instantly into business mode. You'll need representation. I can call Harrison at J.P. Morgan. Actually, I cut him off. I've been working with Goldman's energy team for the past 4 months. You remember Goldman Sachs? Where I was wasting my potential before I left. My mother's hand flew to her throat. Catherine, darling, we should discuss this as a family. We are discussing it, I replied. I'm informing you that the deal is done. The papers are signed. And that worthless land you've been mocking for 6 months. It just made me one of the richest women in Texas. I gathered my things, pausing at the door. Oh, and Thomas, you can keep your $175,000 offer. I'll be busy setting up a proper energy investment portfolio. As I walked to my car, I could hear the chaos erupting behind me. Elizabeth was crying. Thomas was shouting about legal reviews. My mother was calling someone about an emergency family meeting. But I had a plane to catch and an empire to build. Sometimes the best success isn't just proving people wrong. It's showing them exactly how right you've been all along. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from an unknown number. Your grandfather would be proud. Martha. Martha. Grandpa's old secretary, the one who'd slipped me the initial geological surveys 6 months ago, the one person who'd known what that land really meant. I smiled, starting my car. The day was just beginning, and I had a board meeting to prepare for. After all, $2 billion is just the starting point when you know exactly what you're doing. 3 months after Titan Energy's announcement shook my family's world, I sat in my new office on the 47th floor of a downtown Manhattan skyscraper. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city where I was quietly building something far bigger than just an oil fortune. My phone buzzed. Another message from Thomas. The 5th this week. Katie, we need to discuss the family investment opportunity. Dad's put together a comprehensive proposal. I added it to the growing folder of desperate attempts at reconciliation and control. The past 3 months had been a masterclass in watching people scramble to rewrite history. My assistant Julia appeared in the doorway. Your mother's in the lobby again. 3rd time this week. The usual response. Ms. Morgan is in meetings. Would you like to schedule an appointment through proper channels? Julia smiled. She left another envelope with the receptionist. I knew what it contained without opening it. Another invitation to a family dinner, probably at Le Bernardin or Daniel. Somewhere suitably expensive to show they now saw me as an equal. As if money was what made someone worthy of respect. Also, Julia continued, the Goldman Sachs team is ready for you. They're excited about the new energy fund. I smiled, remembering how my father had tried to get his old contacts at Goldman to help him advise me. What he didn't know was that I'd already been working with their top energy investment team to launch a $5 billion clean energy transition fund. Send them in. As I stood to greet the Goldman team, I caught my reflection in the window. No more department store clothes. Today, I wore a perfectly tailored Armani suit, not to impress anyone, but because I chose it. Success hadn't changed me. It had just given me the freedom to be exactly who I was. The meeting went brilliantly. By the time they left, we had the framework for what would become the largest private clean energy investment fund in North America. My grandfather's worthless land wasn't just making me rich, it was helping me reshape the entire energy sector. Later that afternoon, Elizabeth showed up unannounced. Security called. Julia informed me. She's insisting it's a family emergency. Let her up, I said after a moment. But stay close. Elizabeth burst in, designer handbag clutched like a shield. Katie, you have to help. James is in trouble. James, her husband who'd laughed the loudest at Thanksgiving about my desert dirt. The hedge fund is collapsing, she continued. We need a capital injection. Just $10 million. You won't even notice it's gone. I studied my sister carefully. Did Dad send you? She flushed. He thought he might be more receptive to family. Family, I repeated softly. Like when you and Thomas tried to have Grandpa declared mentally incompetent after the will reading? That was Thomas's idea. I just went along with it, like you always do. I stood up, walking to the window. Tell me something, Elizabeth. Did you ever ask yourself why Grandpa left me that land? She was quiet for a moment. Because you were his favorite? No, because I was the only one who ever asked him about it. The only one who sat with him for hours while he talked about geology and mineral rights and patient investment. Everyone else was too busy waiting for him to die so they could sell it. Katie, please. It's Catherine, I corrected. And I'm not giving James money to bail out his bad investments. But I will give you some advice. The same advice Grandpa gave me. Look deeper. Think longer. Stand firmer. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'll have my team review James's fund. If there's something worth salvaging, we'll discuss terms. Real terms, not family favors. After she left, Julia brought in the latest financial reports. Titan's production numbers are exceeding projections. The royalty payments alone this quarter will be. Double them and send them to Martha, I interrupted. Anonymous donation to her grandchildren's college fund. Julia smiled. Already done. My phone buzzed again. A message from Thomas's wife, Victoria. We need to talk privately. About Thomas's gambling debts. I added it to the folder. The family secrets were tumbling out now. One desperate plea at a time. That evening, as I was preparing to leave, my father made one last attempt. A text message. The family name means something in this city. We should be working together, not apart. I looked out at the darkening skyline, at the city where I was building my own legacy. You're right, I typed back. The Morgan name does mean something. That's why I'm launching my projects under my full name, Catherine Elizabeth Morgan, so everyone knows exactly which Morgan is changing the energy industry. I gathered my things, heading for the private elevator. Tomorrow I had meetings with solar technology developers, wind farm operators, and 3 major investment banks. The oil money from that worthless land was just the beginning. My phone buzzed one final time. A photo from Martha, my grandfather's old desk nameplate, the one that had sat in his study for 40 years. Found this in storage, her message read. He always said it would look better on your desk. I smiled, thinking about that old wooden desk plate with its simple inscription. Look deeper. And I had. Past the family doubts, past the surface assumptions, past the easy answers. $2 billion hadn't just bought me freedom from their expectations. It had bought me the power to build something they never imagined possible. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving people wrong. It's in proving yourself right in ways they never saw coming. 3 years later, the Catherine Morgan Clean Energy Fund would be worth $50 billion, making my original oil fortune look like pocket change. The worthless land that my family had mocked had become the foundation of an empire that would help transition the world away from fossil fuels altogether. And that, as my grandfather would say, was worth more than all the oil in Texas. Because sometimes the best investment isn't in what people can see. It's in what they're too blind to notice. And sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what you inherit, but what you build from it.